Hello everyone, welcome to this special November version of Learn with the Nerds. My name is Nate Halliwell. I'm a solution architect with Pragmatic Works, and I'm joined here today by my good friend Andrew. Andrew, introduce yourself to the people.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Andrew Perez. I'm a Power Platform trainer here with Pragmatic Works. And I'll be sort of joining Nate. Power Apps is sort of where I got my start in the Power Platform, so I'll be joining Nate, sharing maybe some war stories or something, as well as handling the chat as well. So as you all, I'm sure, have noticed, this is a live event. So if at any point in the chat I see a question that may be particularly interesting for everybody to learn, I'll go ahead and ask Nate throughout the event for maybe clarification on certain things. We will also be holding a raffle throughout the course of the event, so whoever is asking I suppose, the best questions or maybe the most questions, completely based on our objective and unbiased opinions here, will be receiving a free on-demand learning subscription for a year that gives you access to all of the courses on our on-demand learning platform. So we sort of want to encourage you to interact with us here, all right? So yeah, Nate, tell us about what we'll be doing here today.
Well, first of all, Andrew, that was way too professional. This is a very laid-back live event, okay? So I'm putting you on the spot here. Tell me
Never mind.
the funnest fact about yourself.
The funnest fact about myself?
Fun fact that nobody knows.
I'm not a very fun guy, dude. I can't just
You heard it
be
here first,
fun
folks.
here now.
Andrew is not fun.
I turned that part of my brain off when I come into here. I'm blind in my right eye. There's something nobody knows about me. All right.
Completely blind?
Like actually completely blind in my right eye.
So, okay, well,
There.
just for a little...
That's not very fun, I'm going to be honest, but that's a fact nobody knows.
It is fun for me
All right.
because Andrew and I play ping pong at least once a day, and now I know why he's so bad.
It's the only reason I can sit through this event is because he's right here, okay? So the whole time I don't really have to see him as I go.
Lucky you. No, thank you. I'm really excited and grateful that you're here with me today because as kind of a solution architect, someone kind of behind the scenes at Pragmatic Works, I don't really get in front of the camera too much, and it's a nerve-wracking experience, but you've got all the experience with it in the world, so I appreciate having you here to kind of bounce ideas off of.
Of course.
You're someone who does a lot of virtual mentoring here at Pragmatic Works, so you meet with a ton of customers day in and day out, and you kind of see the good, bad, and the ugly. So as we kind of go through today's session, you're going to have a lot of kind of interesting color to add to these topics. So I'm excited about that. What are we talking about today? If you joined the preview a couple days ago, then this will be kind of a repeat for you. But essentially, as I was picking a topic for this month's Learn with the Nerds, I was like, okay, should I do a demo on this, or how does this new feature work? But honestly, as Pragmatic Works is rolling into doing consulting and services again, we haven't done that for 5 years, and we're now doing that again. We are building solutions for customers. So I'm having so many conversations with customers about projects that they want to tackle, and we're having a lot of the initial discussions and kind of project planning. And I thought that was such a good topic because as we get into some of these people's apps and automations and their solutions overall, we see a lot of areas for opportunity or things that they might have missed during the planning phase.
Right.
A lot of customers don't know how to plan at all. So that's what this session really is. It's how to plan for your Power Platform project, all the steps that go into the before. So before you ever start building an automation or an app or a Power Page site, all the topics we cover here, even though they're going to be tailored towards Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Pages, the same topics, the same kind of concepts apply to all areas of technology and development, really. So we're excited. Again, this is all about planning a Power Platform project, and throughout, I'm going to have some goodies. My boss, Brian, and Devin, they keep saying the word free candy, so I'm just going to go with it. We have some free candy that we'll share with you all in the chat. We have some student downloads. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. So I started building this slide deck, and I was like, let me do like a kind of step 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of go in that route. And then I realized step 1, there's actually a step before step 1. So as we're meeting with all these customers that are kind of coming online with the Power Platform, they have a lot of ideas. They have a lot of use cases or a lot of existing applications that they want to move into the Power Platform, and they're not really sure where to get started. So first step is picking a project that's a good first project for the Power Platform. I recommend here kind of finding the low-hanging fruit. What is something that's going to have really high business impact, but on the difficulty scale, pretty easy to tackle. It's like not too complex, not too much logic. And then quick wins we found have kind of facilitate user buy-in. So a lot of people, if you have a huge organization with thousands of people and they're used to doing something a certain way, they hold on to that with like the white knuckles of death. They don't want to let that go,
right.
Even if it's a bad process or even if it's an outdated technology. We see it all the time with like Nintex forms, Nintex workflows, InfoPath, Microsoft Access applications. The people who use them, they're used to them, they don't want to switch. So having those quick wins where you can quickly stand up a solution that works, that solves a business problem, and it was easy to build and easy to train people on, they're going to use that and say, wow, you guys built that really fast and it works great and it's actually better than it was before. So you're going to get user buy-in that way.
Yeah, it's far more encouraging to switch over. Now, I just want to say, someone's going to hear me over here with the giggles because Nate has been so proud of this step 0 slide. And I'm just about to find out why. And if all it is that he has 1 star sitting in that corner here.
That was an animated star.
An animated star sitting in that corner here. I'm like considering just standing up and walking away.
Just for the folks at home, maybe we show that again. Ooh, okay. I'm not a presentation person, but I did add a nice little animation there. And you're not even ready for what's next, okay?
Oh,
so as you get those quick wins, you build those projects, then you're maybe ready to start tackling those projects that still have a really high business impact, but they're a little bit more difficult. But you know what, Andrew? You know what's even better than that?
Yeah. What's better?
What could be better than that? The fact is, as you start building these tools and you get in the Power Platform and you learn how the tools work, those projects that you see now up in the top right quadrant, the high business impact, really difficult to solve, you're going to find that now you have the skills and maybe those projects were not as difficult as you thought. That's pretty cool animation, right? It started up here, did you see that? And now you realize,
you're a solution architect. You make like applications and like complex things.
Yeah, this is complex.
This is the most proud thing you've created.
No.
Was this PowerPoint slide?
But all jokes aside, the projects do get easier. You learn the technologies, you learn how they all interact with each other, and those difficult projects actually do become much easier, which is really cool. But it all starts with kind of picking the right first project. Once you have picked that first project, the first step is to really just sit down and define what are the goals of the project and also what is the scope of the project.
Right.
So really like establishing clear objectives. What is this trying to solve? Really aligning with your stakeholders. What do they need? Does this align with the organization's strategy long term? So key activities here, identify, hey, who are those stakeholders? So many times we're meeting with customers and we're talking with their IT folks. And we think, oh, that's the stakeholder. But really, no, like the IT folks are just there to facilitate the building of this application for a different group or for a different part of the company. So really digging into who do we need to be working with on this and ultimately who are the end users. Once we identify those people, that's when we need to sit down with them and really gather the requirements. That is a step that I didn't know about in the beginning, and I'll tell a little bit about my story. But yeah, go ahead.
Just very quickly, got a question in the chat here. If we could maybe like expound on this a little bit. And I believe this was probably on the other slide, but I think it applies now that you're talking about stakeholders here. Saying probably an anecdote here that it was kind of difficult to decide and show to like stakeholders of the application who would benefit the most. And are there any maybe suggestions on like how to identify that, right? How to identify, what are the metrics that you're using to identify who's going to be the stakeholder of this application? I imagine that's situation by situation. Probably a lot of it is just going to be like who's going to be engaging with it on a daily basis.
I think with every app, there's this word that always comes up in these requirement gathering sessions, and it's personas. So identifying not just the people that are involved, but like what are the personas or types of people that are going to be using the app. Right. They're all going to benefit, some more than others, but really just like identifying what those personas are, what they do at the company, what their role is, and what their role is in this specific business process, so that you can build the app tailored to that persona. You'll see we're going to have a little bit of a demo here and kind of a fake mock interview with a customer. Andrew's going to be our customer.
Yay.
But there's going to be certain personas that are involved in making sure that we think of those personas as almost separate build-outs. Like we're building out this part of the app for this persona, and we're building out this business process for this other persona. When it comes down to who benefits the most, that's really tough to answer, and it probably varies app by app.
Right, but I think that was a good answer there, just that you're thinking more in terms of like the roles of people that are going to be using this this application. And yeah, we'll be going through an example together here with me as the kind of interviewee, I suppose. So you'll get to see kind of the thought process that goes into it before we build out an application.
Yeah, perfect. And then obviously another key activity, setting boundaries, being comfortable, not saying no, but saying, hey, let's push that to version 2. Let's think about this as an MVP, a minimally viable product.
Right.
What can we roll out that will enhance the business process, but we can do it quickly. So thinking about app development in terms of kind of iterations or sprints. Hey, for this first iteration, it's going to do this, this, and this. And then anything beyond that, we're going to push to version 2. So being comfortable having those conversations with your customers, whether they're internal or external, definitely takes time getting used to that, but it's important for the success of a project. And then defining success criteria and measurable outcomes. So what does a successful rollout of this project look like? What are the metrics? So those are definitely some key activities. Before we get into kind of the next piece, which would be scoping and kind of a mock interview. Oh, we're having some mic issues here. But Andrew, do you have any examples through your travels here, the war stories, if you will, that you were referring to earlier about just maybe a customer you've met with that clearly failed to define scope or define goals for their project?
Yeah, and I think one of the themes you're going to see throughout the day is that like the app creation process is a lot of fun, right? It's fun when you're in there and you see all the tools and you see what you're able to create, and you've got this goal that you're kind of working towards here. But let's see, there's one that I'm thinking of right now that was kind of a nightmare session for me to go through, where they were working purely by themselves. They were building out a Power App. They had their own kind of retail site. And they were building out a Power App that was going to store their retail site. So they were like carrying over all the stuff that was on their website and just building out the application with all of that data and trying to get all of the functionality in there. And you know, they did
what type of app was this?
It was a Canvas app.
Oh, okay.
It was a Canvas app.
Interesting.
They did a really good job at teaching themselves all of these different tools. And then they booked and they're like, okay, now how do I open it up to the public? Well, that's something you kind of got to consider, because by default, Power Apps works within the Power Platform. It's purely internal. It's for inside your organization. There are ways that you could make it external. All right, there are possible workarounds for this, but they required programs and they required experience that this guy not only didn't have, but couldn't get in the time frame that he gave himself, which was like probably a week from that point. So that's probably a huge example of where he should have, thought through the process a little bit more before jumping in and just creating kind of for fun there.
So one of these scope constraints that's on my screen, if we could share the slideshow again, it's the last one here. So making sure that the Power Platform can solve your problem, and it usually can, 99.9% of the time it can, but you have to use the right tools for the job. So it sounds like they failed to consider the technical feasibility of Canvas apps replacing their online retail store, which is, it happens, unfortunately. But when you have someone to talk through, experts to work with as you're going through, hopefully that doesn't happen. So I'll tell you a little story about myself. So when I first started building Canvas apps, that's how I got into the Power Platform, was building Canvas apps. And back then I was actually a recruiter. So I like to say in a former life, I was a recruiter. And my boss came to me and was like, Nate, I'm having a tough time managing the day-to-day operations of the team. I don't know who's doing what. We've grown so fast. And I just can't keep tabs on everyone. So I was really good at creating spreadsheets at the time and started to go down the spreadsheet route. But long story short, I found Power Apps. And I was like, okay, this is the answer to my problem. Power Apps is going to solve everything. It took me a long time to teach myself Power Apps. I actually did it with the Pragmatic Works YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I took some classes on there and then started building out. And every time I had a problem, I would just go back to YouTube, search for Brian Knight and the problem I was having, and he always had a video on what I was trying to solve. But yeah, long story short, I built that app in about 6 months. My boss was nice enough to give me some leeway, give me some leash to be able to build it, and I was so proud of it. It worked really well. It was pretty. It did everything we needed it to do. But it was a unique use case because it was my own business process. It was my own team. So I didn't need to gather requirements. I didn't need to meet with stakeholders. I was the stakeholder. Mm-hmm. So that was a good thing. It was a blessing and a curse, if you will. It was a blessing because now, 5-6 years later, here I am doing the best job in the world. But it was a curse because I got off on the wrong foot. I thought all these apps are so easy, and my boss loved that app so much. She took it to some of the other recruiting teams at this huge, global firm. There was dozens and dozens of recruiting teams just in the U.S. alone, and she took it to all the leaders of those teams and was like, "Look at what our team built. Do you guys want something like this?" And they were like, "Of course we do. This is going to solve a lot of our problems." So they were like, "Nate, build this app, but don't do it for your team. Do it for these 12 other teams."
Right.
And I was like, okay, I think I know what I'm doing. And I just started to attack the problem, right? Because apps are fun. Like you said, I just went in, started trying to solve the problem with Power Apps, and I failed to even talk to any of the other recruiting leaders or any of the team leads to say, hey, what's important to you? How do you want this app to function? If I had done that, I would have realized that this is not one app, this is 12 apps. I basically spent a long time building one app for 12 teams, and none of them liked how it worked because it aligned with my team's business process.
Right, it's all the same application for completely different areas.
And then if I had known about defining scope and defining goals and gathering requirements, it would have solved me a lot of heartache. Because I was really frustrated by the end of it. I was like, I built this great app and no one's using it. It happens all the time where organizations spend all this time and money developing an app, but it kind of misses the mark. Now
there is there's a question here that it's more personal, but I kind of want to open it up to kind of everyone here. So Jaylon seems to be asking here, saying it comes from a Python, P-SQL, and Vue.js background, so it's going to be easy for me to learn Power Apps. Well, Power Apps is it's made to be very similar to Microsoft products. So it's not necessarily for pro developers. If you have experience with, let's say, PowerPoint or Excel, a lot of the pieces of the Power Platform in general, Power Apps as well, you're going to sync right into. The coding language of the Power Apps section is based off Excel formulas. The design of Canvas apps is based off of PowerPoint. So if you're used to how Microsoft applications work, it's kind of more for business users in that sense.
I kind of agree with you. I'm kind of going to push back on a little bit too, where you're saying Power Platform is not for developers. That is so not true these days.
That is
even
true.
At the recent Power Platform conference, they had a huge slide on the screen that was like, "Low code is dead," but a little insert above it that said, "As we know it." So low code as we know it is going away. And in the age of agentic AI and generative AI and being able to use AI to solve problems, this person who asked this question is actually going to have a huge leg up because they're going to be able to use their background in coding and development They're going to be able to generate a bunch of code with Copilot and AI and create these really amazing apps, but they're going to know what that code does. And they're going to be able to read it and tweak it and make it fit their needs.
Right.
So no, good question. I would say if Power Platform is here and I was a recruiter, I had to like really level up to learn Power Apps. Whereas if you're a pro developer, you know, it's a much more lateral transition, and you have already proven that you have the aptitude for the technology. So it's going to be really, really easy to transition. Right. Cool. Right. Well, if we could, Andrew, I'd love to kind of give people a sense of what a scoping session looks like.
Sure.
So we'll switch gears here a little bit. I'm going to go find this document. And this document that I'm about to pull up now, this is actually included in the student files for today. So Andrew, now, if you could kind of play the role of a customer, kind of switch gears here.
All right.
So do you want your name to be Andrew? You can be anybody you want to be.
Nat, you gotta like, you can't give me, can you call me His Holiness? Like
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay, then I guess Andrew is fine. Then I'll work with that.
Okay, Drew.
All right. Jeez.
All right, Drew. So I hear that your team is having a bit of a problem these days, or a conundrum. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the sake of this interview session, let's just say I'm the IT manager, right, for my team. I'm the fix-it guy. Something goes wrong with one of the programs that we're using or apps that we're using, I'm the guy they're going to come to. All right. And back when we were a smaller team, this was kind of a dream job. They would just send me either an email or a Teams message, or they'd send me a text message and they'd say, hey, this isn't working. Can you get on this? Can you work on this? And I was like, sure, 4 or 5 people sending me those when a problem arises, that's not that hard to manage. Mm-hmm. So that's been working fine. Well, recently, our team has been growing a little bit. Now it's not like 3 or 4 people. Now it's closer in the like 10 to 20 range. Mm-hmm. And so all of these people sending me all of these messages, the programs that we're using are also expanding. The range of things we're having to handle is expanding. And so this kind of unorganized method that worked before isn't really working as much anymore, Gotcha. Things are starting to fall through the cracks, and I'm having a hard time keeping up with it. So I'd really like to be able to kind of streamline that process, right? Just be able to look in one location to handle these problems, mm-hmm. Instead of have to keep up with and juggle all of these things.
Gotcha. So the main purpose, if I could just reiterate it, is that you get a bunch of requests to fix things. These things that you're fixing, is this a technology? Is this hardware, software? Both?
Yes, this is full IT. Yeah.
So this is basically an IT ticketing system, if I'm understanding that correctly. And
pretty much, yeah.
Okay, and what we're building, or what you'd like to have built, does this exist right now? Like, what is your current process? Walk me through. I have an issue with my computer. What do I do next?
Yeah, so there hasn't really been a process up until now. You send me an email, right? Or you send me a message, or just get in contact with me. I've been trying to add in some things to make this process a little easier on myself. I tried making maybe a SharePoint list to try to make this a little easier on myself, just to have a record of things, but that still requires me to keep up with it, go in and make the record, and now I've got kind of an extra piece of work on top of fixing the issue that's already there.
So you are creating these tickets in your system where you're using to track it, basically.
As of right now, yeah.
Okay. And is the goal to have this be more of like a self-service type of deal where users can create their own tickets?
Yeah, that would be, they're kind of doing that already when they draft this, email and all of that. I'm just pulling whatever they told me the problem was. So mm-hmm. yeah, having something where they could just design this themselves, mm-hmm. and then I can see the issue and respond to it would be great.
So what is the main reason that we're sitting down today? Because you came to us and said, these guys know what they're doing in the Power Platform, and we want Pragmatic Works to build this for us. So what is the main reason what we're building this today?
Well, the main reason is that even now, this is something that's grown kind of impossible for me to keep track of.
Gotcha.
This is let's just say, this is a team and company that's continuing to grow, right? We're looking at probably around January, start of a whole bunch of new projects, probably going to need all hands on deck for them, and I expect a lot more problems to come up at that point. So having this planned out now while I've got this leeway would be great.
Gotcha. So you mentioned a minute ago that you tried something in SharePoint.
Yes.
Can you show me that SharePoint list?
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, on your laptop, go ahead and access my SharePoint, because apparently I've got the worst security at this organization that's been known to man.
So here we have your issue tracker. You said you have so many requests you can barely keep up with them. I only see 3 in here, so I don't know why you think your job is so hard. But
I mean, I can barely count that high, dude.
But no, I mean, now is a good point to kind of look at what you have, so we can understand better, like, what is important to you, how do you track this data, where does the data live, how is it connected to other data sources. So just being able to take a look at this is really helpful. So it looks like you have issues come in, there's a description, it looks like you prioritize them, you track their statuses. And this is interesting. So you assign these issues to people. Who are these?
Yes.
Who are these people?
So I do have a couple of other people that have been working under me. Like I said, I'm the IT manager.
Okay.
But there's a couple of other people who are providing aid here. So I've got a couple of IT guys on my team.
IT techs almost. Like
yeah.
IT technicians.
Yeah, kind of.
So as I'm asking Drew these questions, I'm getting a sense. I'm taking a step back from the interview here. So as I'm going through, I'm kind of purposely asking these questions in a way where I'm digging into the pain points a little bit, getting your buy-in as a stakeholder. I didn't even need to ask who is the main stakeholder on this project. Just through talking to you, I'm learning, okay, you are the main stakeholder. This is your business process, and you're the one that has all these pains. So
Right.
I'm talking to the right person. But as I'm talking to you, I'm learning that there are some other people involved and a different persona. So you're the person, the manager, that's dealing with creating all these requests and then assigning them. But then who you're assigning them to is a totally different persona. So you've got people on your team at maybe a more technical level who are kind of dispatched to work on these items and to close out these tickets.
Right.
So now I've got persona 1 of IT manager or administrator. I've got persona 2 of the technicians who are solving these problems. And then just inherently, we've got a third persona who we haven't really talked about yet, but the people with the problems, right? The people that have issues with their computer or their device or their Wi-Fi or whatever. So just through talking, we've gotten a good sense of the 3 different personas here. So I'm going to switch back to my little cheat sheet that everyone has access to now. So now we can kind of go through questions and talk about licensing and platform considerations. So actually, let's do that.
Yeah.
As an organization, Drew,
Okay.
what does your Microsoft licensing look like? Have you looked into what it takes to build these Power Platform tools and kind of compare that with the licenses you have now?
Somewhat, sort of. I mean, we've got standard Power Platform licenses across the organization, but we did get a couple of premium licenses, let's say, to kind of test out features and see what extra stuff we might have access to. We haven't really played with Power Platform a lot, but just about everybody on my team has a premium license, and then the rest of the org, let's say 100 people or so, 200 people, they've got standard licenses to enter the Power Platform with.
Oh, wow.
So that's about where I am.
Okay. And I guess, what is the organization's appetite for more licensing? Do you envision a world where all of the users in the org would have premium licensing as well, or just your team for now and you're kind of testing the waters to see how it goes?
I think we do just my team for right now.
Okay.
Right now my team's the biggest problem, but who knows? If we are doing really, really well with this, then we could probably scale that up a little bit. Maybe other people can get involved in this sort of thing that I'm getting set up here.
Gotcha. Okay, that's very interesting to know. So we've talked about I'm switching gears, I'm stepping back from the interview and just kind of talking through like why we're asking these questions and what we'll talk about next. So we won't go through every single question on here,
right?
But you definitely should when you're planning a full project. But if I'm trying to actually put myself in this interview, I'm already thinking a couple of different interesting things, right? I'm hearing that you do have some premium licenses already for you and your team. And I know that your team is IT. So you're the manager and you have your technicians. So all of you guys have premium licensing. That's interesting. All of the other users in the organization, the people that don't have premium licensing, now we're getting into some branches here of like how are we going to build this thing in a way that solves your needs really well, but also makes it so you don't have to break the bank on licensing. So very cool. All right, going into users and stakeholders, we've talked about this a little bit. The main users of the solution, sounds like there's kind of 2 or 3 groups of main users, which we talked about. We've got the IT manager, we've got the people in the org submitting tickets, and then we've got your team who's solving those problems for them. Are there any other, so Drew, back to the interview.
Okay, all right.
Besides the people inside the organization submitting tickets, are there any other users of this system we'd be building?
Well, more recently, we have been working with more contractors and vendors just, again, to handle the more immense workload that we're getting.
Yeah.
So occasionally, as of right now, these contractors tend to handle things a lot more themselves, but when they're using something on our end, right, I'm still the IT guy. I'm still the one that has to fix it. So if a contractor or vendor has a problem, right now, they're sending me an email. So it's not happening that much currently, but I could see that becoming more of a thing as our workload starts to increase.
Okay, so you envision a world where people outside of your organization are actually interacting with the data and creating their own tickets.
Correct.
And potentially like viewing the status of their past tickets. So that's interesting. So just through poking and prodding and asking these questions, I know in my mind where I want to go with this. And through asking these questions, I can dig deeper into like what he said, and I can dig deeper into, well, how painful is that for him? That way I have some kind of firepower in my pocket that I can come back to later when I make recommendations. Hey, we can start with this the solution that will consume your licenses on your team, but we can make it maybe so that everyone else doesn't have licenses, but over time we might need to buy more licenses. And I because I've asked the right questions, I've dug into the pain that this is causing. We kind of have that ammunition to go back to the customer with. So.
Right. And I've been seeing in the chat, there's a few people who are asking like, what data source should I be using? What kind of app should I be using? And again, this does absolutely depend on what your scenario is, but it's something that we will be addressing later. We definitely are going to have a good bit talking about data sources. So if you're interested to know, we'll be going through that decision process as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So yeah, just kind of going over the rest of this. I don't think we necessarily need to go through each and every question, but hopefully this gives people a sense of how to have these conversations and more importantly, why you're asking these questions and what you should be thinking about in your head, not necessarily out loud to the customer, but why you're asking these questions, and in your head you're kind of creating that flow chart of, if they answer this way, then I want to go steer the conversation this way. Okay, cool. So we talked about users and stakeholders. There's a section for data and integration. So where is the data? How much data is there going to be? Are there third-party systems that you would need this to integrate with? And how can we integrate it with those systems? Are there APIs? Is the data on premises? Like what is the auditing needs? What are the archival processes that may be needed? What type of security? We want to get into all those types of questions, like how important is the row level security of data? Do we want everyone to be able to see everything? Do we want people to only see the records they've created? So again,
for me right now, just as a reminder, I've got a SharePoint list. I started on something, so I'm not coming into this brand new here. So there is something to start with, and that's definitely a consideration when we are deciding how to build this out going forward.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll take a look at that in a second here. So also just at the end of the project, Andrew, who's responsible, like once we build this thing for you, who's going to support it and who's going to maintain it long term?
You can only ever trust yourself, dude. It's just gonna be me. It's just gonna be me. No, I get. Well, maybe I can have. Well, I don't know. I'm having you guys build this out, but maybe if one of the guys on my team, right, would be able to, sit through the process with you, learn some of this stuff, I could have them handle it, or maybe teach my team as well how to handle this project. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely.
That we could do?
Yeah. Actually, it's. Something that I would almost require of your team is to have someone kind of on demand with me, because as we're building this out, we're going to have questions. You're the experts on your data. We're the experts on the technology. So we really need both parties involved to have a successful launch.
Right.
So yeah, just as you have a Power Platform project, it is so important to like have a key stakeholder that's there, that's on demand, available to ask questions to. Selfish plug though, one of the services we now offer at Pragmatic Works is fractional development. So you can basically hire myself, Andrew, you get the whole team, and you hire us as a part-time resource for your project. You can hire us for 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months at 20 hours a month or 40 hours a month. There's different buckets, but depending on how much support you need. But so Drew, after this whole thing gets built out, if you want to look into fractional services, that's something we can definitely talk about.
Absolutely. I see Marie in the chat here says that most of their customers would have no idea how to answer these questions. You usually have to figure all of that out. Yeah, that's definitely what we've been noticing here as well. This is just as much a document for like asking yourself in your own development as asking your customers. These are definitely the biggest preliminaries that you want to get out of the way before even starting on the project, right? Yeah. Otherwise, you run into these problems halfway through, or
you're never going to get
the way done.
You're never going to get every single thing you need. And this conversation that I'm having with Andrew is an ideal conversation. That probably never happens this fast or this easy.
I could have chosen to be more annoying.
Really, this is going to lead to 3 to 4 more conversations with 3 to 4 other people. Like all these questions I'm asking, all these sections even probably have a different person that I need to be asking these questions to. But just to show kind of how these conversations would go in a perfect world, of course. Right. You're kind of being all those people in one shot here.
Right.
So I think people get the idea, and that's why we shared this document with everyone so they can kind of take it and digest it afterwards. But let's move on. So we've done kind of step 1. We have defined the scope. We have defined the objectives. Actually, one more thing, just quickly on defining the scope. And I want to switch back to my PowerPoint here. So one thing that we didn't really talk about was like presenting a solution. So Andrew, Drew, after speaking with you and learning kind of what you're trying to build here, I kind of see a solution where, and tell me if I'm wrong, I don't want to prescribe anything to you, but
go for it.
Almost a Canvas app where your users in the organization, and don't worry, I'll get into what a Canvas app is, sir.
Okay.
So a Canvas app where your users can submit their own tickets, and they can come back at any time and they can see all the tickets that they've submitted, and they can check the status, they can send reminders, they can reach out to the team. So kind of a self-service portal built through Canvas apps. Then on your side, your team is different, where you have yourself managing these requests and delegating them to your team, and then you have your team who are going in and solving the problems for people. So I'm almost thinking maybe, depending on the data source we go with, I'd love to show you model-driven apps and show you what they look like.
Okay.
And the reason I am kind of going the model-driven app route is because long-term you envision opening this up to external people. And the only way we can kind of expose our internal data externally and let people interact with it would be through Power Pages. So for iteration 1, I'm picturing just an internal app, not opening this up to vendors. but we could build maybe an automation or maybe a Microsoft form that your contractors can fill out, and then we can build an automation that takes the form data they've submitted and then puts that into our table and allows you to manage it through a model-driven app. So just trying to define like what is in scope for iteration 1, what is out of scope, and coming up with kind of band-aids or a minimally viable product, if you will.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely an important thing, because you'll come out of this, through this set of questions with a full solution already in mind. But you also have to consider the time that it takes to get there. You know, what is going to be necessary now? Again, you're aiming for those kind of low-hanging fruit. What can I create now that's going to give me the most value? And again, this is not, you know, a one-and-done thing. You can add on to an application. How many versions has just Windows in general gone through by itself, right? Same thing for any application that you create. So yeah, that sounds like a good solution there.
Awesome. Right. So the next step 2, is we need to decide where is the data going to live. And right now your data already lives in SharePoint. So as a consultant, I might recommend to you that we go a different route, and I now know why because I've had the conversation and I know what your pain points are. But really identifying where that data is, all of the kind of technical landscape. What are you guys using for your ERP? What are you using for your CRM? Just getting a good understanding of where all the data lives and all the relevant data to this project. And then selecting your connectors from there. So and then we get into licensing considerations. You know, what is included in the licensing we already have, what is going to cost extra, and what is there just not a connector for that we're going to need to build custom connectors in some cases. So really quickly, just talking through some of our most commonly seen connectors, especially with apps. I was talking to Andrew the other day about this. I'm like, have we really seen a ton of apps where data is stored somewhere else? And I would say 8 times out of 10 with our customers, it's one of these 4 connectors. So if they're using Power Apps, they're more often than not, they're a Microsoft shop. They're using Excel, SharePoint, SQL, or Dataverse.
Right.
So really being able to understand what are the pros and cons of each data source is a huge part before we get into the next slide, which is how to decide which one to use. Really understanding the pros and cons helps you have those discussions and make those decisions. So here on the left, we just have like some features that are commonly brought up. I don't know, Andrew, do you want to talk through some? I feel like I've just been talking, but
talk through some of the features. Or?
Yeah. So what do I mean? Like, what is like a relational?
Yeah. So
what do I mean by that?
Throughout all of this, and throughout all of this document, just to make this very clear, all right. And this is, I believe, Nate, something that they also have in their. They also have this in their student files, which once again posted at the pinned at the top of the chat here. But all of these things mostly are Power Platform related here, right? These are things that we notice in the behavior when working with Power Apps. So you may have used it with another data source and been like, well, I mean, it seems pretty scalable, right? When I use it with such and such application. And that may be true, but when you bring it into an app, you may notice some strange behaviors overall. So let's see.
So I'm thinking for relational, like 9 times out of 10, you don't just have a table of data and that is the app you're building or that's the data you're building the app on top of. You usually have a customer, and that customer has invoices, and those invoices have certain products in them. So all of the data really sits in different tables, but the data is related to one another. So these 4 different connectors, some of them support that out of the box, and some of them don't really. Like Excel, you totally have to code that in. If you're using Excel as your connector for Power Apps, and you have relational data, it's going to be a bad time. SharePoint kind of has that. So there are lookup columns, there are people columns in SharePoint. So it's kind of set up in a way that you almost can make it like a relational database, but when it comes to filtering and querying that data, you get into delegation issues and there are just certain things that the app doesn't support. So that's why I kind of
Right.
put this little half moon there. Like it kind of supports relational data, but not really. SQL and Dataverse definitely your best options for enterprise grade applications, scalable, governable. So they fully support relational data. Concurrent users, if you have multiple people in the data at the same time, again, Excel is just not going to be the best answer there. Even if you're using the native Excel on your desktop or in the web, and you have multiple people in there, it's a little bit laggy, and you might have one person writing something in the same cell as the other, and they don't know that they're doing it. So that problem really compounds itself when you add the API layer in. Like you have an app sitting on top of that file, and the people don't even see the file. Things get really messy really quickly. Again, SQL and Dataverse handles that no problem. Scalability. So some of these, I don't need to talk through every single one, but these are some of the main considerations that come up when people are trying to decide which connector and which data source to use. So is the data scalable? Like how much data can it hold? How many concurrent users can be in there? Does it have auditing built in? Does it have security built in? Can it handle complex queries? Can I write a really complex filter statement to Excel in an app? No, definitely not. You can't. It'll just error out on you every time.
One in particular, I think, that I want to touch just to explain here the way that it's looking, I suppose. Licensing implications, that one down there at the bottom, you see the check marks and then 2 X's. That's to say that in Power Apps, Excel connections and SharePoint connections can be made not for free, but with the standard license, right? If you have access to Power Apps, you can make Excel and SharePoint connections. Other data sources, while they might be better, do tend to require a premium license or above to work with. So that's sort of the reason why SQL and Dataverse are kind of X'd out there. SQL is considered a premium connector, and Dataverse is considered a premium, I don't even know if I'd call it a connector as much as a feature, because it's kind of the central data source of the Power Platform. But that's one that I was thinking might be good to kind of explain there what that looks like.
Yeah, thank you. Optimized for ALM. So what is ALM?
ALM, Application Lifecycle Management. It is it's the way that it's the different stages that your app is going to go through before it's ready to be shown off to your user, right? So there is a developmental phase. This is how standard application lifecycle management should work. There's a developmental phase, and a lot of these are shown in the Power Platform through having separate environments for each of these stages. After it is fully in through development, you would have your sort of testing phase where you just bring it into an environment, you just have some people break the heck out of it, right? And then after that, it goes into production. Now this is, again, a life cycle. This is cyclical. If you make updates to the app, you're gonna wanna go through all 3 processes again, right? You go to development, make your changes, put it through testing, and then put it into production. Some of these data sources handle this transition a little bit more gracefully than others here.
Yeah, so that's why Excel definitely X'd out there.
Yes.
SharePoint, I did say, I gave SharePoint a little half moon here for application lifecycle management. There's a little bit of a hidden feature, and I can show that now, or maybe I'll show that later. But as far as, SharePoint is not part of the Power Platform, right? It is not aware of environments. It's something totally different. So the thing with Dataverse is that the database is baked into the environment. So if you're building in a developer environment, you can move that solution you've built to a production environment, and it'll move those tables with it, and it'll be a separate database. So you'll have one database with your production data and one database with your development data. SharePoint doesn't really behave like that out of the box, but there is a way to get it to do that, and I'll show that in here in just a minute, but I believe we have a question.
Yeah, there's one here in particular. Some of you may have seen it, but somebody asked, would you ever give them the option of Dataverse for Teams? Size limitation would be a concern for me. So there is a difference between those two things. There's Dataverse as the standard data source that you're using, and then Dataverse for Teams. The one good thing, I suppose, about Dataverse for Teams, and this is for if you're building an application, sharing it within your teams, sharing it within teams in your organization, publishing it to a channel that people can access it. The one good thing, I suppose, about Dataverse for Teams is that it doesn't require special licensing like using Dataverse out of the box does. So Dataverse for Teams you can use with a standard Power Platform license, and if you have access to Teams, you will be able to build applications in that. But the downside is, again, the size limitation that's being brought up. I believe the size limitation is 2 gigabytes of data. It's 2 million rows, I think, or 2 gigabytes, and I think it's whichever you hit first, which is really, really small when you come to think of it. You know, that's probably what...
It depends on the size of the project. I
Yeah.
personally love the idea of Dataverse for Teams for companies that are wanting to try it out without committing to the price just yet. Like,
Right.
you can do a lot with it. There are certain things you can't do with it, so I would look into the limitations of Power Apps for Teams or Dataverse for Teams. There's a lot of the core tables that you don't get, a lot of the functionality, features, scheduled workflow, scheduled data flows. So if you're trying to port data into it, so there's a lot of small limitations there. But the nice thing is, like a Dataverse for Teams environment can be upgraded at any time. So
Right.
if you hit those size constraints, or if you hit a limit and you need it to be full Dataverse, it's just a toggle. You just press a button and it'll spin up and move it to a production environment. So it's a great place to start for organizations that want to try it but don't want to pay for it just yet.
Alrighty.
Really quickly, so I want to show one of those things with the data sources, which was like ALM for SharePoint, because this is something we'll get into later towards the end of the call, just some common pitfalls with planning
Yes.
for these projects and how things can go wrong. And one of the most common things I see when people are building with SharePoint is they haven't set it up so that it's ALM friendly. So you've got a bunch of bad, junky data mixed in with real production data, which is never a good idea. So here, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to create a solution real quick. So I'll just do a demo solution. And we'll talk about publishers here in a little while as well. But for right now, I'm just going to zoom through this. So the whole concept here is when you move this solution, which I'm building in a sandbox environment, when I move that to a testing environment, I want my app to automatically point to a different SharePoint site that doesn't contain the same development data. So the way you would do that is if I go in and I'm just going to create a really quick Canvas app. And this data we've been working with is in our Learn with the Nerds November 2025 site, and we've got the issue tracker here that Drew told us about. So here I've got my Canvas app. Now, in the past, before I knew about this fun little feature, I would go and I would say, okay, I need to connect my app to SharePoint. So I would go to the data source, I would add data, I would add SharePoint as a connector, and then I'd be happy. I'd be building my app with my forms, my galleries. But what I want to do here, knowing that I'm building this in a sandbox environment and I'm going to move this to a different environment where I don't want the data going to that same SharePoint site, if I go to settings, and if I go to updates, it's going to be in one of these tabs, and honestly I forget which one, so I'm just going to search for environment variables. Maybe it's under general. Man, this is going to be embarrassing if I can't find it. There it is. So it's under the general settings, and I want to automatically create environment variables when I'm adding a data source. So this is a really nice feature. I'm going to turn this on, and then I'm going to click OK. It does say I need to totally refresh my page. So just so my app saves, I'm going to add a little text label. I'll save my app. And then in the meantime, while we're waiting for this to happen, so Have you ever run into an issue with people wanting to kind of swap out data sources in their app?
Oh, goodness. Oh, this one doesn't get as much of a war story as like a war like memoir here, because this is a lot of my problems that I see whenever I'm doing that kind of one-on-one consulting work, that virtual mentoring work. A lot of the problems that I see typically come down to like poor choice of data source. A lot of the issues tend to be like delegation issues. You know, people will work with SharePoint because, again, it's the free option, right? It is the free option that makes it, you know, by its nature very attractive. But you'll work with SharePoint, and then your Power Platform application, whatever, as soon as you get to like 2,000 records, you know, any higher than that, things just start breaking. It's not searching through all of my records. It's not filtering things anymore. I'm not really even seeing all of my records here. My flow is not kicking off. You know, my Power Automate flow is not kicking off for records past this certain point. And so you have to, there are workarounds, but those workarounds are really just kind of patching up a sinking ship there. You know, at that point, once you're getting to that level, then moving on to SQL or to Dataverse is going to be like your 100% best option there. So yeah, that's something I see a lot is, you know, you see the different data sources, you see, oh, this is the free one, and then you pick it and you don't really give much more thought to it than that until much, much later in your app when the problems do arise.
Yeah, I've had that issue. I've had a customer that had the opposite issue. They started with Dataverse and they're like, we're going to go all in on Dataverse, and then in the middle of the project they're like, well, this project's maybe not big enough to warrant that, so we want to switch to SharePoint now. And it's like, oh, well, we have to rebuild all of the tables that we built in Dataverse and build them in SharePoint and try to get them to line up as best as we can, and then we need to go into the app and find every single instance of us referencing that Dataverse table and switch it to the SharePoint list and deal with the errors as they come up because data is just stored differently. So
that gets rough.
Yeah, so that's why it's important to know the pros and cons of each and to fully scope out what your project is and what it's going to be in the future so that you can pick the right data source from the start so you don't have to deal with that. So I've got, really quickly, I've got the app reloaded and I've checked and I see that this setting is still turned on, so it will automatically create a variable when I add a data source. So really quickly, I'm going to go ahead and add SharePoint as my connector for this app. And then we'll see the magic happen. I know we've got a good question that came in just a second here, but let me just finish this thought. So I picked my Learn with the Nerds site, and then I've got my issue tracker list. So as I connect to that list, it's going to tell me, hey, this is creating an environment variable right now. An environment variable, if you've never heard of that before, it's very self-explanatory. Just take each word, and it is something that will vary from environment to environment. So maybe in this dev environment, we're using the Learn with the Nerds SharePoint site. And in that SharePoint site, we have a list called Issue Tracker. But when we move this to the production environment, maybe we have a different SharePoint site, but with a similar list with the same schema. So I'm going to save this environment variable. It's actually going to create two environment variables for me. One for the SharePoint site and another variable for the list. If I was to add two lists here, I would actually get three environment variables. Again, one for the site and one for each of the lists. So I'm going to save this app, and then once this is saved, I'll go back into my solution. And hopefully, if I did this correctly, I might not have, because when I reloaded the app, let's see. If I go into that solution, my hope is that there is an app, but there's also two environment variables.
Right.
Oh, there is. So there's my app, and I have two environment variables. So what this is going to look like, I'm not going to show it, but if I was to export this solution with the app and the flows and the tables and everything that's used in this solution, and I want to migrate this to production, the first thing that's going to happen when I go to import that solution is it's going to say, hey, you've got these environment variables. What is your actual SharePoint site in the production? What is the SharePoint list that you want to point this app to? Now that means I don't have to go into the app in production and start editing it and hot swapping those connections, which gets really, really dangerous. I saw we had a good question coming in the chat.
Yeah, we had a good question here from Handsome507. I'm going to assume that's how it's said. I'm not complimenting you. I'm just saying that's what it looks like. Does Power Apps support on-prem SQL Server connectors? Yes, it has the capability to support on-prem data as long as you can give the connector the credentials to sign in with. You can access the data whether it is on-prem or in the cloud.
What do you have to set up to get it to connect to an on-prem SQL Server?
Gateway, but Nate, I think you can tell us a little bit more about that because I work mostly with cloud data.
No, that's all we wanted to get across.
You
do have to set up an on-premises data gateway. So you will have to install the on-premises data gateway on the machine where that data is, and then that will be an object in the Power Platform, and you have to share access to that data gateway so that people using the app can see the data.
Dude, that was word for word what I was going to say.
For sure.
Took it right out of my mouth.
I believe you. All right, sorry for that quick little demo, but hopefully this is like a cool thing that not a lot of people know about. I just remember when I was like first building apps, they were all SharePoint apps, and if I'm being really honest, I didn't even know about environments. So I was building these apps and changing the best analogy I ever heard from a customer was like, changing the tire as we're driving down the freeway. Like people would request things, and I would go into the app and be working on it for 2 days. Meanwhile, I've got like 50 people who are still using the app every day. So, but yeah, these environment variables just make things so much easier. And the environment variables can be used not just to store data sources and like different SharePoint sites. They can be used for a lot of things. I use them all the time in my Power Automate flows. Like if I'm deep linking to any Canvas apps or model-driven apps, in the dev environment, I want to deep link someone to my dev app. But once that moves to production, I actually want those links to direct people to the production app. And there's really no way to do that without environment variables.
Environment variable.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So I think people get the point there. Let's keep rolling here. Oh, I have so many things. There we go. Perfect. All right. So to kind of help guide these conversations, Andrew and I have put together a little bit of a flow chart. This is another one of those things that's in the student files. But these are just some questions to help guide you towards the right data source for you and your project ultimately. So I always like to start up here, like how, and everyone thinks their app is important and mission critical, but let's actually take your example here, Drew. Let's go back to our interview.
Okay.
And
I got to remember who I was. All right.
Drew, this IT ticketing system that we're going to build for you is this critical to the success of your organization, really?
I mean, it's critical probably to me and my sanity.
Yeah.
But if I collapse in the middle of my workday because of it, I'm sure the organization will still go on. So I don't think it's necessarily critical for the organization, just for this, piece here.
Got you. And even though it's not mission critical, is it enterprise-wide? Is it everyone in the organization is going to be maybe needing to touch this thing at some point?
Right. See, that's a trickier question. See, for right now, it's just my team, right? But we're also thinking about opening it up to contractors already in version 1. And, we're thinking about later on opening this externally. If we see success with this, I could see everybody in the org utilizing it. So this is something where even though I'm starting with just my team, I would say, yeah, this is something that's going to definitely grow and encompass a little bit more.
Gotcha. So I actually kind of started this question here, but this is really 2 questions. You kind of said no to the mission critical, which might lead us towards the SharePoint Excel route. But the fact that you said, this is going to be used by everyone in your org to start, then I would say, yeah, like this is an enterprise grade application. And also, you already answered the next question. Will external people be interacting with the data ever? Not even just right now, but in the future, are external people going to be interfacing with this data? And instantly, that leads me to Dataverse. Why would that be, Andrew?
Well,
Why
the
not SQL
reason
it?
being is because I mentioned a little bit earlier that there was a possibility, a possible workaround for that guy that was trying to put an app that was fully internal, external. That workaround is with an extra little piece of the Power Platform called Power Pages. Power Pages is the website design element of the Power Platform. And what it can do is it can host an application on a website that is going to be generally accessible to people outside your org. So that is the possible way you could do it. Now, Power Pages, however, has the limitation that the only data source that Power Pages will work with is Dataverse.
Okay. And I just want to clarify something. You mentioned that Power Pages can host an app. Are you talking about like taking that Canvas app they built and putting it on Power Pages?
Yes.
Okay. We would not want to do that necessarily because that will work. You can put an iframe on a Power Page, and then you can go in and see that Canvas app on that Power Page. But that's because you're in the organization. So I have seen this come up a couple times where people are like, "Ooh, I know a workaround. I'll just embed my Canvas app on my Power Page, and look, I preview the website and it works perfectly." But as soon as an external person comes across that, they're not going to be able to open it up. It's not going to load for them. But yeah, interesting. So
in which case you would design a website that still links to the same data source.
Exactly. You would
that
build,
allows them to do that, and then you will still see those records inside of the application that you build for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you build the website on top of Dataverse that the external people use. You build the app that you use internally on top of that same database. So as people are putting records into the database externally, you're seeing them real time in your system. If Andrew had said, no, this is only ever going to be internal, then that leads me to, okay, well, do you have a DBA on your team or a database expert, a database developer? Do you have someone like that either on your team or available to you? Because I'll tell you what, Andrew, I know my way pretty handily around the Power Platform, but you put SQL Server Management Studio in front of me and tell me to write a query, I'm instantly going to Copilot because I am not a database guy. I know how to interact with the data and build apps on top of the data, but creating those SQL databases, I really have no idea. So yeah, just the fact that Dataverse is so optimized for the end user, it's at the end of the day, it is just an Azure SQL Server database with a pretty front end. But that pretty front end is very much needed for people like me. So if you don't have someone with that database expertise, then you're going to want to go the Dataverse route because it's optimized for, no offense, people like me and you, Andrew.
Right.
And then if you had, even if still you had said, yes, we do have a database developer, we have a DBA, then my next question would be, okay, well, do you plan to use a model-driven app at all? And if yes, again, you have to go with Dataverse because Power Pages, model-driven apps, the only database they will work with is Dataverse. Maybe we show, for the folks that don't really know, like what a model-driven app is, what it looks like.
Yeah, we've mentioned it a couple times, but let's have a look at the actual ins and outs of that application, the type of application.
I like it. So here, you know what we'll do? Because I want to demo a couple things.
Okay.
One of the things I want to demo is like, how can you start to integrate your external data and get it into Dataverse? So I've already got this solution stood up. I'm going to create a quick table. Now I'm going to mirror Drew's SharePoint tracker here, where he's got issues with descriptions and priorities and statuses and the people they're assigned to.
All right.
So in my solution, I'm going to go ahead and add a table. I do love this new tables feature where it kind of gives you like an entity relationship like an ERD, like you kind of drag and drop and create this really nice experience. But I like to have a little more control when I'm doing this from scratch. So I'm going to do advanced properties, and we'll call this Drew's. No, I'm just kidding. We'll just call this issue tracker. In the primary column, we'll just say issue. So spinning up what I'm doing right here is just creating a table right inside of Dataverse. Then once I'm in that table, we can add columns, we can set the relationships to other tables, we can add foreign keys or alternate keys to this table so that way it supports data imports and all that fun stuff. And then how people experience the data, we can create all of our different forms for our different groups of users. So I might create one form for you, Drew, as the IT manager, but I might create a separate form for Jonathan, your IT tech. He doesn't need to see necessarily the same information that you see, but it's still in the same table. It's still the same record. And the views. How is the data being filtered? How is the data, like what columns are being shown in those views? So this is where you set all that up. I'm just going to go ahead and throw a couple quick columns in here. So description. And what else did we have on Drew's tracker here? Priority, and this looks like a choice column. We've got critical, high, normal, and low.
Sounds right.
So we'll go with a choice column here. Just for this, I'm going to say, no, this is not a global choice. We'll go critical, high, normal, low. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip the status column because it's the same thing. It's just another choice column. And then assigned to. So really quickly, here's a common pitfall that, again, we'll get to. We have all these common pitfalls laid out. But as people are getting into Dataverse or getting into the Power Platform, I notice a lot of customers will see that, oh, in SharePoint, there's an assigned to field that is a person column. So in Dataverse, let me create a lookup column to the user table, and I'll call it who it's assigned to. If you do that, though, then you're missing out on the benefit of some of the out-of-the-box security features and things like record ownership and who owns the record, who can see it, based on who owns it, who can do what with it. Can I edit this record? Can I share this record? Can I delete it? So wherever possible, if security is an issue, then really, instead of who that record's assigned to and adding my own custom column, I'm going to leverage the owner column for that. The owner column is one of those metadata columns that's already in every single Dataverse table. So I think that's good enough for now, right? I've got a table. Now, ready to see how easy a model-driven app is, Andrew?
Okay,
or Drew, I mean Drew. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a new, actually let me go back to my
solution.
Yeah, so now I'll go to new, and I'll do an app, and I'm going to do a model-driven app. We'll call this Drew's Big Tracker. I'm going to add a new page to this MDA, or this model-driven app, and I want that page to be based on a Dataverse table. There's my issue tracker. I'll just publish that out real quick. And in about 10 seconds, we've made a model-driven app. And now what that model-driven app can do is really all out of the box. All these things that I'm about to show, these are things that you would have to code into a Canvas app with formulas. But with model-driven app, these are all kind of out of the box features and functionalities. So the ability to navigate through different tables. Here I'm looking at the issue tracker, or the issues. The ability to add new records, select records and delete them. Built-in charting. We can create custom charts inside of here. We can also use Power BI to just kind of visualize this view on the go. We can run flows against records in this table. We can export all this data to Excel. So all these commands up here, and there's more even. So some pretty cool stuff all out of the box. And yeah, so really easy to do. What you got for me?
No, nothing. So this is sort of like, for lack of a better term, I suppose, but like your kind of quick and dirty application. I mean, that took us almost no time at all to build. And it seems like I can navigate around throughout the application, perform general CRUD functions, create, read, update, and delete right out of the box. Yeah, so let's say I want something like that, right? I want that to be like my hub here.
Yeah.
So I'm going down the Dataverse path, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. If you want a model-driven app, you are going. And already we decided you're going down the Dataverse route.
Pretty much.
Simply because you're going to have external users. So, so yeah, definitely utilize this this slide, folks that are on the call. You know, we've got obviously this is not an exhaustive list of questions to ask, but this just kind of points you in the right direction and teaches you how to ask the right questions.
Right.
Step 3. So designing everything in a way that is scalable and governable, like long-term. What are some of the main things that stick out to you, Andrew, when you see like designing scalable solutions?
Let's see. The two biggest things that I would worry about if you're designing scalable solutions are going to be number one is going to be following application lifecycle management. That dev, test, prod separation that you have is going to be a huge thing that's going to really save you a lot of grief down the road. You know, having that separation between the things that are currently in progress and the things that are supposed to be used by now. I'm just throwing a very quick like war story here, but I had to work with someone from an organization that was building all of their apps and sharing all of their apps in the same default environment. They were using the default environment for everything. So there was no separation between things that were currently in progress and things that were already finished. There was also the fact that any of these changes affected people in the middle of them dealing with, in the middle of them like developing the application, people are using it. Right? So they're seeing these shifts. Now, you know, there is a save and publish and all of that that's available in your apps, but for changes to the data source, those started affecting people as they're using the application. You know, there's also the fact that people would go in and they would notice that for some reason, the search bar in their application is like 2 inches to the right of where it should be. And the reason is because somebody logged in, went into the app, did not realize that they didn't hit play, and they have the full capability to edit it. So they tried to type in the search bar, and I guess they got frustrated and moved it around with their mouse. So that goes into not only that first thing of separating this out, but also the second thing of keeping track of security, right? Certain people should be able to do certain things that others should not, right? That's definitely a big thing that I think gets kind of, I don't want to say that it gets overlooked. I think it is exactly as, it's not an overrated thing. It's exactly as rated as it should be. Having the proper security policies for each persona of person, as we were saying earlier, each role, is definitely something that will help you in the build out of your application solution architecture down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. This is my biggest one is security. Not enough people understand it. You know, when I first started getting into Dataverse, I avoided this topic for so long. I was like, why can't everyone just be system admins and everyone can see everything? And that would be so much easier, wouldn't it? But no, once you get into it, you realize, oh, it's actually really easy. Dataverse has made it very easy to set up those roles and to manage those roles, even across environments. There are tools that can help you do that, like XRM Toolbox, things that will help you manage people's security roles in one environment versus another. So there's tons of cool things out there. I will show. I'd love to show kind of how you can set up security roles. And one of the best practices that I typically do with every new environment. So yeah, let me open up the admin center here real quick. Just admin.powerplatform. And I'm going to go to my Learn with the Nerds environment. And over on the right, you'll see we have things like security roles and who the users are in this environment. So I'm going to go into security roles. And with every environment, there are tons and tons of pre-existing security roles. One of the most commonly used ones is basic user. So obviously you don't want to give everyone system administrator and let them do everything they want, but you want people to be able to see the apps that you've built and maybe interact with your tables. So basic user is a role that I think with every single new environment, if you don't take anything else from this day, like remember this, when you create a new environment, take this basic user role and copy it, because you can't edit the basic user role. But what you can do is create a copy of it and call it your organization basic user. Or if you're a alphabetical person, then I'll call it basic user PW for Pragmatic Works. And that way everyone that I add to this environment, I'm going to give them that basic user PW role. And then any single table that I add to this environment that I want people to be able to interact with, I'm going to start with that basic user role and decide, hey, what should people be able to do with that? So yeah, setting up security is very, very easy. I'll go into this basic user PW role, and here you'll see all of the different tables in Dataverse, and you'll see what that role can do with those tables. So if I search for the account table, for example. So the account table is just a standard table, and you'll see that people with this basic user role, they can create records, they can see their own records, they can edit their own records. So basically, they just have access to their own records, right? If I wanted to change that, I could say, yeah, let the user, I don't just want them to see their own stuff, I actually want them to be able to see every account, right? But I only want them to edit the accounts that they've created. I only want them to be able to delete the accounts that they own, you know? Mm-hmm. And this is hierarchical, so you can set it up, hey, actually by business unit. Anyone in my department can see my records. Or if you have hierarchical business units, you know, anyone in my business unit or any business unit under mine. So this is really, really easy to set up. I'll just go through real quickly our custom table. So what was it called? Issue tracker?
You have your filter for assigned tables.
Oh, thank you. Show all tables. There's our issue tracker.
There we go.
And you'll see, because this is a custom table, that basic user role has no access to that table whatsoever. So across the board, they can't see it, they can't edit it, they can't assign it, they can't do anything. Now, instead of going through and clicking each one of these one by one, there are some out-of-the-box kind of roles. So I can go to permission settings. It's prompting me to save my changes from the account table. But I can say, hey, give full access across the board to the basic user. Or just give this collaborate, and they can create and read and write, but at different levels. Or I can do my own custom thing. I'm going to say for the issue tracker, for right now, let's just basic user, they can do everything. That would not be a good idea, by the way. But
yeah, terrible.
Just showing how you can easily set this up. So, but then you can start to peel it back from there. So you can start with one of these pre-built roles and then take them back. So you can say, yeah, I want them to be able to create and read everybody, but I really only want them to edit the records that they own. I only want them to delete the records that they own. And then save and close. So
I was just thinking, the person that I dislike most in my office, just delete their IT problems. Just
who is the person
as it comes up?
Who is the person you dislike the most here?
I can't tell him. He's
so it's a him.
He's in the room with me right now.
Is he on camera too?
I'm not at liberty to say.
Okay. All right. Let's go. So, oh man, not from beginning. Not not there either. Where are we? Okay, so we've talked about making sure that you go into the planning, like that it's scalable, having security front of mind, having environment strategies in place, making sure that things are dynamic between environments through environment variables, establishing a COE environment where you can install the COE toolkit, and taking advantage of the robust monitoring and analytics tools that are provided for free. That's one of the things we do at Pragmatic Works is actually we do a full day hackathon with customers privately called Admin in a Day. We teach your IT teams how to manage and how to govern the Power Platform, which is really cool.
That was actually a question earlier. Somebody, gosh, there's so many chats all at a time. But someone, there we go, asked the question earlier on whether we have any resources and how to learn about implementing environment strategies and basically setting this admin side up, and that would be exactly that. Exactly that. We provide an Admin in a Day workshop that goes over all of these things to get your Power Platform, just workspace in general, set up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be the resource there for sure. We also, through our fractional services, will install the COE toolkit, get it set up for customers, and then maintain that and update it every month on an ongoing basis as well. Step 4, aligning with business processes. So we've done all this planning, we've done all this talking, and we really haven't even built anything or decided what we're building. So in terms of aligning with the business process, really what I mean by that is having those really in-depth conversations with the business users. Hey, how do you today interact with this data, interact with the system that's currently in place? But ultimately, the reason I dive so deep into this part, into understanding how the users use the apps, is so that we can start to enhance the experience and optimize it. Just real quick, one of the projects that we just wrapped up.
Yeah.
It was to replace a bunch of Nintex forms and workflows, and initially we were just kind of tackling those and going at them, building it one for one. Hey, it's already been built, it already works, so let's go ahead and just convert this workflow to a Power Automate flow and do it exactly how it does it in the Nintex flow, easy. But then as we start getting into these flows, we're realizing, why are we doing it this way? Why does the flow do that? Or why is security set up in that way? Or why does the approval process, we start asking these questions, and we made it so much better and easier for the customer and easier to maintain. So if you're having those conversations, then you're doing the right thing. The whole goal should be to enhance how the system works right now, not just build it one for one. What are you laughing at over there?
No, nothing at all.
Okay. So optimize, don't just replicate. Continue to gather feedback as you're building this out. Iterative kind of approach, sprint style, if you will. Let's get into the fun stuff, the common pitfalls. This is where the war stories happen, Andrew. So
yes.
Talk me through the thing. What is the number one thing you see the most?
Oh my gosh. Number one thing that I see the most, the worst number one thing that I see the most, the worst thing is the building in default environment not utilizing solutions. Mm-hmm. The number one thing that I see the most is actually on the next slide here, mm-hmm. but those two are definitely the most difficult to work around once you've already got the problem.
Okay.
Right. So building in the default environment, we talked about that a little bit earlier. I talked through one person that it was clearly a mess that they were dealing with. The other thing, not utilizing solutions, which we kind of sort of went over it, but solutions are like little folders that package your project together, right? Mm-hmm. They hold everything that's in your project, they hold it all together. That's gonna be something very useful for your just general organization of your application. It keeps all of your projects confined into different locations, and it makes it so much easier for you to move these projects from one environment to another. Because let's say I created the app that you showed me, right? And I've got that one table, and I've got a model-driven app, and you were saying maybe we could do a flow too. If I did not build anything here in a solution, then in theory, what I would have to do if I wanted to move into production is I'd have to take the table, and then the app, and then the flow. And some of these things may be dependent on another, so they may not, import cleanly into the next place. That solution packages it all together to allow you to move it. So people not utilizing that, that's definitely something that I would highly recommend.
Yeah, of course. It all connects. Like if you're setting up ALM, then you need to now use solutions.
Right.
And if you're using solutions, that leads to like one of my common pitfalls is people not understanding how publishers should be set up, and just kind of like creating whatever publisher they want. So I'll quickly show this in action. As I set up my solution earlier, it asked, what publisher do you want to use for this solution? And if you're not thinking about like what that's asking, then you just kind of blow by it and you never really understand it. But if we look in my solution right now, we can see what this is doing. So I created a publisher called PW. And then whenever I make a table or an app or anything in this solution, it's going to get a logical name. And that logical name is actually, think of it like a schema name, but it's going to contain the publisher prefix. So everything I make in this solution, because I use the PW publisher, it's going to be prefaced with PW. What is the benefit of that? The benefit of that is now I can keep track of like who's building what teams are doing what, and if my team is building something called projects, but a different team wants to build their own project table, I can start to differentiate those because I can tell who built what by using that publisher. One cool thing as well is if you go in, if I go into my solution details here and I edit this publisher, a lot of people skip over this. They just give it a name and a prefix and then they click save. But there's also a contact tab up here. So this is where you can really start to drill into like, hey, if there's an issue with this solution, this is who you call. So you can put in your phone number, your email address, your address, city, like all this information, so that if I'm in a customer's environment and I install a solution that says PW on it, first of all, they know that, okay, Pragmatic Works built it. But if someone sees that and they're like, I don't know what PW is, they can go into the publisher and go to the contact tab and they can say, oh, Andrew, like A. Perez at pragmaticworks.com. That's who I need to reach out to about this. So yeah, publishers are very important. Now, one of the common pitfalls I see is when someone creates a new publisher and they don't really know what to call it. And they just call it like, oh, my initials are NH, so let me call it NH. Or, oh, I'm building an issue tracker solution, so maybe I should do a issue tracker publisher. If you have a publisher for every single solution, your IT admins are gonna can I say kill you on YouTube? They're gonna be very angry.
I
don't think I can say that.
Issue tracker.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking about it.
No, they're going to be very angry. So, so yeah, typically you want to set up your publishers by department if you're at a large organization. And if you're a consulting company or a services firm, you would just want to kind of put your own stamp on there so that when your customers are looking at your solution, they know that you're the company that built it. Unless you're really bad at your job, and then maybe call your publisher a competitor's name.
Oh, don't give ideas. How many people are going to put Pragmatic Works in their stuff now?
Let's go back to the common pitfalls here. So, yeah, not accounting for differences in environments. We talked about that. Setting up environment variables. Here's one we haven't really touched on though. Like, everyone thinks they test their app, right? Mm-hmm. They build it, they test it as they go, or even their automations. Like, every time I add a few complex steps, I'll run a test and make sure that my flow is still succeeding. That's not what I consider testing, like in terms of the application lifecycle. Thorough testing, you should be instructing the people who are testing your stuff, tell them, please break this. Try every single combination you can think of. Try to click this button twice really fast and then go to a different page. Like, do everything you can imagine to try to break your app, because I guarantee you, if you don't, your users are going to break your stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's better to know what those issues are going to be before they arise and fix them before they happen. Another one is eating the elephant, right? The story I told about my second app that I built. I tried to tackle all these 12 different teams. I tried to tackle this huge app in one go, and then by the end, it took so long and I wasn't happy with what I produced. So being able to define what's in scope, what is out of scope for each sprint and iteration, and not just writing things off and saying, no, we're not going to do that, but yeah, we'll do that, but we'll do that in a future iteration of the project. Again, blindly replicating a process one for one. Especially, people fall into this a lot when they're replacing an existing system. So I see it all the time with like access databases. People want to build it one for one in Dataverse and build the app on top of that. But it's like, hey, maybe when they set that data model up, they didn't think through that well. Like maybe we could enhance this part of the process. Maybe we can take this long-winded multi-stage approval and maybe it doesn't need to go through 8 rounds of approval. Why? Like no one asks why ever anymore. Like why does it need to go to 4 people for approval? Is it really, like it's a $10 request? Does it really need to go that deep?
Yeah, you're still working on it at the same time. Now, before we share this next slide here, somebody asked a question. What about app documentation? Go ahead and share the next slide because this is my number one. This is the number one that I see.
Failing to document it is, with what we do, like our whole job 99% of the time is going in behind other people that have already built something and trying to fix it. Is so hard to go into an app that's already been built and to try to make it better and make it work, even with documentation. So imagine our strife when people don't document.
Right. And you can't just consider as well, like, what about the next guy, right? Because the next guy's going to have a problem. But the next guy could also be you a year from now. Something breaks in your app or in your automation, and you have to come back and you barely understand what you were trying to do in each location, right? Leaving yourself behind comments, following a naming convention. These are all different ways that you can sort of communicate to both yourself as well as other possible developers as to what pieces of your project are performing what processes here.
Yeah, and you're going to find, everyone finds different things that work best for them. But back to what you said about, hey, not just for other future developers, but for your future self. Find a tool that works for you. Some people like Visio, some people like their own, I don't know, just come up with a method that works best for you. I love this Obsidian app. This is like free and open source. There is a paid tier, but
Marie was actually recommending one in the chat as well, PowerDoc.
PowerDoc, okay.
That's one that apparently can take your app and put together a documentation.
I think I've heard of that. I haven't messed with it, but I'm excited to try it. But even just from like I hid all my left hand here because it has a bunch of customer names, but I create these little ERDs, even without the columns. Like I just want to remember, I want to be able to come back to something and know how all the tables are related without having to search through the relationships of every table. So just come up with ways that work for you, but definitely document. Like the whole point of this whole call, I think, is that people want to do the fun stuff.
Right.
And no one wants to do the not fun stuff. And unfortunately, documenting your project is one of those not fun things, but it's going to make your life really not fun in the future if you don't do it.
Right.
What else? Andrew?
Well, let's see. Of the ones that we have here, because we could just read down the list. No emphasis on user training. Your app, you want to make it accessible, but at the end of the day, like people need to be trained on how to use it. So you do have to communicate to the user. You can't just drop it in their lap, one day. And I think people have been more or less pretty good with that, but that is something you want to focus on. Jumping straight into app development before modeling data. This is one that I don't see too often, but where I do see it, it's a big problem. It really kind of throws a wrench into the whole project where they're kind of, I see people will like model as they go, right? Like, oh, I don't really need this, I need this field. I don't have it, but I can make it real quick, right? Okay, but now you have an extra like 100 other records that you've been utilizing that do not have any kind of functionality built in for this particular, column type or field or even extra table that you want to throw in here. Not leveraging service accounts. I see this one as more, maybe you can speak more to the Power App side of this, but I see this more as a problem when building in Power Automate, where an email will be sent out from the connection made by that one user, right? And so all emails are going to go back to that user instead. You know, if it's being triggered by an email, you don't want to have 100 other emails in your inbox on top of the ones that you are dealing with. That are solely meant to kick off automations, right? That should be something that's held by a service account, one that somebody is not having to sit there and manage. I don't know if you see examples of this in the Power App side as well.
I definitely see it more with the Power Automate. One of the biggest things I see is like orphaned flows, orphaned apps, orphaned connection references. So you have these flows that are built on connections to connectors through users' accounts, and then those users go away, and then people wonder why their stuff is broken. So tying those things to non-user accounts is really, really important.
I've got a favorite comment here thus far that I'm going to start saying from here on. In reference to documenting applications, 6 months ago, only me and God knew how this app worked. Now only God knows. Sorry, I enjoyed that. I had to pull that one up.
That's awesome.
That's definitely something. That's definitely the sentiment that I see quite a bit.
I love that. But no, this has been a fun session. I think the whole goal of this was to not do a very demo heavy. It was to be very high level in terms of how to start thinking about these projects from before you get started. And I think we've achieved that. So thank you, Andrew. We're over time. We were like wondering, hey, this 90 minutes. But we're over that. So
I think I'll go ahead and announce the raffle winner real quick. It seems to have kicked off a little bit early on, but I'll go ahead and put it on the screen. Looks like Karen Masters D7W is the winner of our raffle. So what that means, Karen, is you will be receiving a free on-demand learning subscription. And you'll see a comment right afterwards asking you to take a screenshot of your YouTube login and send it so that we can send that to you and you can claim it. But congratulations on winning that. Again, this is decided by a bot. So just because you receive it does not necessarily mean that we like you. All right, no, I'm kidding. I'm teasing. I'm messing around. Congratulations, Karen. All righty, so yeah, I think we've sort of hit the end there. Thank you all so much for joining us here. You want to sign us off?
No, thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Andrew, for being Andrew.
Yeah.
Andrew and Drew.
Andrew and Drew. Yo, the English language is broken,
it's
dude.
Weird. But definitely be sure to check out the next Learn with the Nerds, which is going to be with Allison. So thank you, everyone. Hopefully you got something out of this, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
See y'all.